Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Learning How to Live. My name is Tabang Makubela, and as usual, I'm not alone. I am with, you call yourself Sacred Cindy. We never spoke about that, you and I. But yes, I'm not alone. I'm with Cindy. Today we're delving into something very, very nice, but I think before we get into that, Cindy, how are you doing?
I'm great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. And I think to maybe something lighthearted,
Yeah.
the reason why it's Sacred Cindy, a couple of years back, I was starting with all my herbal blends and teas and things, and the message that kept coming through for me is all of life is sacred.
Oh, nice.
And because every single moment that we find ourselves in can be something beautiful and sacred. And I loved it so much that I decided I'm going to remind myself that if I, do like a hashtag Sacred Cindy, that every time I see it, it will be a reminder that all of life is sacred.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Very interesting. So for today's conversation, we're looking at the body never lies.
Yes.
And I think to sort of like set the scene or the tone for our conversation, I want to start off by sharing with you something that Brene Brown said. And I found it very, very nice and profound. And she was having a conversation with Oprah. And in a nutshell, what she said was, the body keeps score and the body always wins. Mm-hmm. So I think as we get into the conversation, I want to know what was your thinking behind today's conversation? What was happening in your head?
Thank you so much. I think for our listeners, if you're really honest with yourself, if you take 5 minutes out of your day, so like right now, as you're listening, just do a quick scan in your body and see where there's aches and pains. Guaranteed it will either be like a stiff muscle situation or some aches and pains or something in the body like, clearing your throat. There's something busy happening, right? And so the body, and this is through obviously years of observing what people were going through, the body is almost like the cueing system. It's like an early detection alarm that goes off to say something's busy happening, and we are supposed to be waking up every morning without aches and pains,
Right.
with clarity, with all of those things. But the minute you find yourself in that cycle where that's not the case, then you better start listening to your body. Because if you don't, inevitably, as we spoke in our last conversation, chronic illness starts to occur. And the beauty of it for me was when I then did my studies in Meridian therapy. So that's traditional Chinese medicine. And they almost map out the body, how every single organ in the body has a partner organ. And that is almost like you've got highways or pathways that runs through the body. And when you start to understand what the patterns are of the body and which organs work together, you can sort of roadmap what is busy happening in your physical health, mental, emotional health. And then you have this incredible roadmap to guide you to living your best life.
Yeah.
And I think that was the moment for me when it switched to realize that if your body becomes your ally, you can optimize to live your best life.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
I want to delve into emotions, the emotions stored in the body, right? And maybe if you were to give us an example of how unprocessed emotions can actually show up physically,
Yes.
what would you say?
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. So again, this is a bit of a gray area because depending on the market that we speak to, we'll use different language.
Right.
So if I say something like life force energy, sometimes people call it prana or chi, whatever it is, there's an energy that flows through the body. And that energy wakes us up in the morning. If people look at it in a spiritual way, you can say it's the energy of God that flows through you, but there's a life force energy that flows through every single human being. The moment we are unconscious throughout the day, it's almost like you create blockages along the way. So say, for example, you're in the traffic, someone's just cut you off. in that moment, you feel that rise of that emotion. Instead of processing it as it's busy happening, you go on a tangent, but it's almost like you don't properly process it, because by the time you get to the office, you're still angry because of that person that's now ticked you off. And then as the day goes, you are now in that frequency of frustration. So as we know, quantum physics, like attracts like.
100%.
So one situation after the next, after the next. By the time you get home tonight, even if the dog is just in your way, you're going to feel frustrated.
Yeah.
And so that blocked energy, if then by the end of the day you don't do something to release it in a healthy way, so through stretching or exercise or breath work, just to allow the nervous system to come back to balance, that energy actually stays stuck in the body. And when we say energy, it also is directly linked to an emotion.
Yeah.
So then that's where the beauty of the traditional Chinese medicine comes in, because it identifies every single organ in the body stores a specific emotion. So for example, if we look at the partnership of the liver and the gallbladder, you're looking at anger and bitterness and resentment. So if you are the type of person, something happened maybe 10 years ago, for example, I don't know, a relative or something happened, and it was such a traumatic experience, but the root of it was anger. And you held on to that. And that has now stayed in the body over the years. What happens to dense energy when it stays? It crystallizes, like anything in nature. When water that's filled with high mineral content crystallizes, obviously it becomes an actual crystal that you can hold on to. Same in the body. How do we get gallstones? That is energy that's been stuck in the body for a very long period of time.
Yeah.
Anger was not resolved. It goes then into bitterness, resentment, and it literally forms crystals in the body. And then, of course, as you know, to then get rid of it is very painful. So that is the physical manifestation of emotions stuck in the physical body.
It's very interesting, because I actually wanted to ask you why you think the body holds on to these emotions. So your fear, anger, grief, and so on and so forth. But I think you covered it beautifully. That said, what happens if I listen to my body?
So just to answer a little bit further on that previous question. So the reason the body also holds onto it in that specific way is because we are predominantly made of water. And so say almost 70% of the body is water, and then the rest is gases. And if you convert that into its purest form, it's still water. So as we know with the studies of Dr. Emoto, water holds memory. So even if if they defrost a glacier from like 20,000 years ago, there will be ancient memories and wisdom that's stored in that water, whether on a molecular level that they have a look at it, or whatever context you want to look at it. So your water in the body is almost like the library that holds the story of your life.
Sure.
And so that's how we get to that space. And then, sorry, your second question was?
So I was asking, what then happens? Say I decide to listen to my body. What happens?
So what I've done with my studies is I've almost compiled over the last 10 years the symptoms that people get if they don't listen to their body. And I've created a little, like a go-to list, which I will share with our viewers today, for little signs that they can look out for. And then the minute those symptoms pop up in the body, you have an opportunity to say, right, am I going to listen to my body? What happens in that space when I listen? Obviously, if it's early detection, I can still heal the body, bring the body naturally back to a state of balance. Sometimes we already find ourselves in a space of chronic illness, so then there's a little bit more work that needs to be done. But specifically, if you pay attention when the first red light goes on, the beauty of it is more energy, because now that blockage that's blocked you from maybe an emotional experience that you've had. Now the body and the heart and everything is open again, so you can interact. There's flow. And also beyond that, you start to attract more joy into your life, more abundance, more flow. So it really is in your best interest to work on those blocks as they arrive, because you want the higher energy, you want clarity of mind, you want the joy, the blessings of life to flow your way. So yes, it's a beautiful gift to listen.
Very interesting. I want us to move on to the 5 elements, right? And their messages. So this would be Meridian therapy.
Yes.
Right, you spoke about partner organs early on, something that I never ever thought about.
Okay.
I want us to start with the metal one, right?
Yes.
So we talk about the lungs and the large intestine. What I want to know is, in terms of emotional patterns, which ones tend to show up when someone's metal element is out of balance?
So I think the most obvious one would obviously be grief. You know, when we look at the lungs, that's where we store our grief. Because
Really?
that is where you feel, I don't know if you've ever felt that, when you have like this moment of sadness or something's just happened where you've lost someone or something really intense was an experience for you, then the first thing you feel is almost like you can actually feel this. It's like the lungs contract, and this it's sometimes people actually say to me, it feels like something's weighing down on me. I feel this pressure. That's the energy of grief that's literally stuck in the lungs. And the secondary one that goes with that is worry. So often when people have a lot of stress that they are busy dealing with, I find that the first symptom they actually see is the congestion in the chest. So they'll have chronic bronchial infections. The second thing will be skin.
Yeah.
So they'll start to have eczema or rashes on the skin. That is an indication that the lungs are feeling overwhelmed. And the minute you can identify that, to sort of double check that that is definitely the case, the partner organ is the colon, the large intestine. So people, if they are in this process of deep grieving or processing their emotions, they will have a density in the colon, which means constipation, because the body's not able to digest the emotions. It therefore cannot go to the next step of digesting your food. And so maybe if I can just share with you the things they can look out for when that happens is immediately there will be something in the skin. So dry skin, a rash, as I mentioned, feeling this feeling of overwhelm. It's literally like everything is too much for you. You feel like the slightest thing sets you off. And it's just like, I can't deal with this right now. It's just too much for me because the grief still has not been dealt with. The other thing is when we look at meridians, there's a path that runs through the body. So the path from the colon to the lungs actually ends off in the nose, inside the nose. So sometimes people will struggle with nosebleeds or nose sores in the nose. And they're like, I don't know, is it the weather's too dry or what's happening? But if we look at the full story, you can actually see there's blocked grief. And therefore the colon is blocked and therefore there's sores in the nose. And the nose is actually like part 3 of saying, hey, there's something wrong. Then, of course, the muscles that we look into the body is the hamstring, the shoulders and the hamstrings. People sometimes get injuries and they think, oh, I just went to gym and I picked up heavy weights or went for a jog and I hurt my hamstring. Actually, no. The meridian runs through those muscles. So if there is blocked grief, and yes, of course, it can be a muscle injury, but 9 out of 10, and when we get to liver, I'll talk about that, there's always another story. There's always something deeper. It's not just an injury. And then the last thing, as I said, is the congestion in the colon itself.
Yeah.
So then people start to use all sorts of things that they're drinking. And that for me is just so silly because we are looking at the symptom and not treating the cause, the root cause.
Yeah.
So I prefer in my sessions to go to the root cause and say, how
And
can
not
we
the
get to the root, heal that?
Yeah.
So the fact that your father passed away 10 years ago and you still have not dealt with that, instead of putting you on some medication that helps you with constipation. Doesn't make sense.
But how do you tell the difference? Because it's a question I had in mind early on, and I wrote down here, root versus symptoms. How do you tell the difference?
It's very difficult because we live in a society where we've been brainwashed to treat the symptoms. Every single ad that pops up is use this for your sinus or for bright shining teeth, have this, or, so everything is almost programming you to only focus on the symptoms. And again, this is why our Learning How to Live program is about how can I learn to discern between what is mine and what belongs to someone else, first of all. And how do I really learn to listen to my body's intuition as it guides me? So whether it is the heart that's guiding you, the gut that's guiding you, mental images or visions that come through for you, but how can I discern what is really mine? And so it really requires a daily practice of, for example, like we said, starting with your breath work and maybe then doing some stretches and maybe journaling or whatever to see what wants to express, what wants to come through. And if we don't make time to quiet the mind, we will never get to any of this. We will continue on this path of treating the symptoms.
Very
So
interesting.
it is about consciousness. It's about taking ownership of my story and wanting more than anything else to live my best life.
Interesting. I was listening to a song. In fact, I've been listening to it since last night. Tasha Cobbs, she's a minister, and she was saying how back in 2012, I think, or 2013, she would go and minister to people, right? And people would get delivered, etc. Then she would get home and she would be in her room, curtains closed, and she'd be crying. So she was suffering from depression. But one day she got the revelation from God that you're not actually depressed, that depression is actually a symptom from the root of rejection. So you've been rejected all your life, and now it's turning into depression. So I find it very interesting, like this whole symptom, this is root thing. And to your point, it's very difficult to actually tell the difference.
Yes, and I think my advice to the listeners would be to just start listening to the physical prompt that the body's sending you. So if there's an ache, if there's a pain, if there's a cough, instead of just quickly grabbing whatever that tablet is or the syrup that you would normally just take just in case, you don't want to get sick. Instead of doing that, saying, okay, my body's natural state is wellness. And the body is the most advanced computer. So therefore, it knows it's been designed to know how to naturally come back to a state of balance.
Yeah.
So if I feed it a healthy diet, I exercise, and I'm conscious about my thought processes throughout the day, my body will naturally heal itself. It's when I numb the experience, when I escape, whether it is through screen time, too much screen time, or other addictive substances like alcohol or whatever, the moment I escape the symptoms, that's when it becomes a problem. So how do we get back to, first of all, listening to the prompts? And how do we really listen beyond what the symptom is saying? And of course, there's a lot of beautiful guidance on YouTube. And I mean, my favorite tool these days is ChatGPT, where you can literally put in the symptoms and you can say, what is the root cause of this? And it will tell you, this is the emotion, this is the organ that we're looking at. So, you can do that. Or alternatively, if you are ready to commit, and I think this is also where I always differentiate between holistic wellness and Western wellness. Western is quick fix. People want a quick tablet for a headache or whatever because they don't want to deal with the root, right?
Yeah.
I'm busy right now. I just need a quick fix. Holistic medicine asks of you, can you take responsibility for your own wellness journey? And in that case, if the answer is yes, find a healer in your community that you want to work with and that you want to commit to and say, listen, these are the things that I've been struggling with, whether it is childhood things, whether it is chronic illness, whatever it is, relationship related, whatever it is that you are facing in that specific moment. I want to move beyond what the symptoms are. I want to go deeper into what is the root cause so that I can free myself, that I make room for more blessings to come in. But it requires commitment, and that is the first step.
Definitely. Now, moving on to the next element, which is water. There's a nice quote I saw that says, water governs our fears, but it also governs our resilience.
Yes.
Right. So the next element would be the kidney and the bladder. I'm interested in what unresolved fear and anxiety looks like in the body.
So the first thing I ask people when they come to me with issues relating to the bladder and the kidneys and how we can actually see it, first of all, is hair loss. So if people are going through a thing of, yes, they're losing so much hair and balding, a lot of men are like, no, it's a certain age and they start to bald. Actually not. The bladder meridian runs from the top of the crown down the spine. So any neck-related issues, back or spine-related issues, that's the first thing to say, that there's some things that we have not looked at yet. And when it comes to those fears and anxieties and phobias, again, if you trace it back to its root cause, it's normally something from childhood. So to use a silly example, for example, when you were little, your mom would say you were playing in the field, just be mindful of snakes.
Yeah.
And now this innocent child is like, oh my goodness, what is a snake? It must be something really intense because my mom is afraid of it. If she's afraid, then I have to be afraid. So now you've taken on that fear. You've never even experienced a snake. You don't even know what a snake does, but you now know that you need to be afraid of a snake.
Yeah.
And so as we go through this journey of life, we take on a lot of the fears and anxieties of what's projected from our parents, our society, and then, of course, our own experiences that we go through. And the sad part, pardon the pun, of this, as we don't look at these fears and things, we actually go into a space of numbing those emotions, which means we stop crying. And it's an interesting conversation, specifically the crying conversation. A lot of times when I sit with men in session, I ask them, when was the last time that you actually cried? And yes, sometimes we have tears of joy, and that's also another thing. But for the most part, cowboys don't cry, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to be strong.
All the time.
All the time, because you are holding the weight of the world on your shoulders. If it's not your business, it's your marriage, it's your children, it's your family, it's your community. There's always so much expected of you. And 9 out of 10 men who have gone through severe trauma and have not been able to express that they are afraid, that they are worried, or that they are completely heartbroken and they need to just cry it out. First sign is balding, because that energy has been blocked. And so as water is the energy that flows through the bladder and the kidneys, it's the water purification system of the body. Tears is how we release the toxic or the heavy emotions in the body. And learning how to discern what is good for me, as the kidneys does, what minerals, what substances do I hold onto, and what do I discard to release through the bladder. Same in my emotional world. What do I need to sit with right now, process it, work through it, whether it is a fear, an anxiety, severe loss. Do I need to cry? I've just lost someone and a relationship has just ended. Can I give myself the time to really grieve and allow for the tears to flow? If not, again, that's how kidney stones are formed. So the impact that the resistance that we hold to what the body wants to express is so severe that in the long term, we start to feel that impact by loss of hair or chronic neck inflammation maybe. People who are chronically going to the chiropractor for neck and back issues, there's something that needs to release there. The body is asking you, please look at what is at the root cause of this that you're holding on to. So it's a tricky one, but if you are conscious again, bring it back to what is the body really trying to say to me.
And how do I restore water energy?
So water, the things that we look out for is when we're feeling overwhelmed, or if there's fears and phobias. Another thing that we can start to see is bone density is affected. So people who struggle with constant arthritis or those types of things, that is also an indication. There's cravings for salty foods. There's, like I said, the sciatic pain or lower back pain, cramps in the calf muscles, bladder and kidney disorders, spinal problems, hair loss. So in order for it to come back, we need to work on what other liquid form is there in the body. That is our lymphatic system. So that's the other water energy in the body. And so how do we start to cleanse the body? By, first of all, adding more minerals into our water. So your sea salt, it has to be good quality, or maybe like your Himalayan kind of salts, but a pinch of salt, a little bit of water first thing in the morning, last thing at night, to nourish the body with the minerals that's depleted. And of course, to bring in that lymphatic cleanse, we then have to go on a bit of a detox.
Yeah.
So we are actually doing a detox, our Hive-Mind team, this weekend. So for any of the listeners who want to join us, they can find the information on our page. But the intention is, can I increase healthy liquids into my body? So healthy vegetable juices, fruit juices, those types of things to nourish the body and to help the digestive system to almost take a bit of a rest. So for 3 days, you're going to be on a liquid cleanse where you do lemon juice in your water, you do soups, you do vegetable juices, no solid foods. Allowing whatever stuck emotions wants to come to the surface to rise and to be processed.
Very interesting. So the next element would be earth, right? Looking at the stomach, looking at the spleen, looking at the pancreas as well. And I think this is actually a very interesting question. And the question is, in terms of this element, right? How does disconnection or a lack of emotional support affect this earth element?
So this is actually, of all of the 5, the most important one, because stomach is the first place where food obviously comes into the body. And if the body is at a state of acidity or unprocessed emotions, then the entire process going from the stomach into every single other organ is going to be a problem, right? Because that's the first port of call. And so the first place that I notice with clients when I sit with them is a lack of compassion, which is bizarre, right? Because we think as humans, we do have compassion for one another and we want to connect. But it's this thing of not being able to sympathize with the person next to you, because we live in a society where we are so consumed with our own needs that we forget we are part of a community.
Yep.
And so in a conversation, the minute you realize that someone is, for the first half an hour, only speaking about themselves, that's an imbalance in the stomach, which means the body is so self-absorbed in its own energy, it's not giving and receiving in flow, that it becomes acidic. You are operating from a space of toxicity. And then from that space, it's supposed to flow into the spleen and the pancreas, where we obviously generate new blood cells. It helps with the insulin levels in the body. It means the knock-on effect of that is you can become quite a bitter kind of person. There's no joy. There's no inspiration. And so I always say to people, obviously, from a stomach point of view, the first telltale signs is you start to crave more sugar, because you're lacking joy in your life. The spleen and the pancreas can't generate that healthy level of insulin for you. So as a child, your connection would be, whenever I felt sad, mom would buy me an ice cream or a lollipop or whatever, some sort of candy, something sweet, or she would bake a cake or pancakes, or vetkoek or whatever. But the link is joy is sugar. And so now that I'm living in this life where I'm trying to grasp all these things to fill up my cup, but I'm still not satisfied, I go for sugar. So my first go-to is whatever, your,
chocolate, yeah.
Whatever. So that's the first thing. Second, like I said, is the compassion and sympathy is lacking. Problems occurring in the fatty tissue of the body. So people think it's not just overweight, it's the organs of the body are feeling weighed down. So that's obviously when they start to have diabetic problems. So that's an issue. High acidity, as I mentioned, chronic illness and inflammation. So because the body is so acidic, you have chronic infection. So if you have one thing after another happening, that's a sign, guys. The body is too acidic. Again, it shows up in the neck, the shoulders, shin pains. And then from there, if not dealt with, goes into the liver. So it's a knock-on effect. People can't sleep well. They struggle with breathing. So often, because the stomach is too acidic, the meridian actually runs up into the sinuses. So you'll find people who snore at night, stomach is too acidic. So if you've been snoring for years, okay, we need to look at how can we rectify the body so that, first of all, we bring the body back into its alkaline balance. And then once that happens, we obviously then start to clear out the lymphatics, the sinuses, everything else. But it doesn't have to be a chronic thing that you sit with. Snoring doesn't have to be a
Yeah.
thing. So it's those kinds of things. And then obviously, how do we bring it back into balance is we first of all come back to healthy foods or whole foods. So try and stay away from things that has too much sugar, which is ironic because that's what you're craving. But
Yeah.
if you can stay away from the processed foods and come back to whole foods, especially greens like leafy greens, those types of things, it actually grounds the body, nourishes the body, and it brings you back into a space of alkalinity. And of course, the first thing is you will start to feel a natural sense of joy. There will be the sense of, I am now able to, as soon as my physical body is alkaline, I have capacity to now help my neighbor. And, I've had a conversation with some of the ladies in our community groups, and they often say to me, how can people not want to be a part of a community project, whether it is cleaning the river or helping at the local church or at an orphanage or whatever, like they don't understand it. And then I have to bring them back. Remember, we live in a society where people don't even know how to heal themselves. Therefore, if they don't have capacity to heal themselves, they don't have the capacity to reach out to their community members to help them. So how do we heal the world? By healing ourselves first. And once that human is balanced and healthy and they know how to deal with whatever life throws at them, they can extend a hand and say, hey, can I be a part of this community project?
Yeah, because you can't operate from an empty cup,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Fill your cup first and then help others.
Yeah.
Very interesting. I want to look at the wood element now, and I think you're gonna say quite a lot here.
Yeah.
So this is where the liver comes into place and the gallbladder as well, right? When people feel stuck in life, is it because there's an imbalance when it comes to this wood element?
So it's difficult to spot treat. Each person's story is unique, and again, maybe I can use athletes as an example. Often when we work with athletes who get chronic injuries in their muscles or their tendons, we look at the liver. And the reason for that is the toxins that whatever we consume gets dumped into the liver first. And obviously, if not processed, goes into the gallbladder. But the meridian runs through the muscles and the tendons in the body. And so, for example, you will either find that the athlete is constantly pumping all of these chemicals into their body, which they think is enhancing their ability, to make them faster or stronger. And they don't realize the side effects of the chemicals in those products are getting dumped into the liver. Or the after effect would be like after a soccer game or a rugby game, everyone goes for a beer, right? And it never stays with one beer. It might be 2, 3, whatever, a late night scenario.
20 even.
Exactly. So they don't realize I've now spent so much energy and depleting my body in this match that we just had. Instead of putting back minerals and things that nourish and strengthen the body, I am now adding something that dehydrates the body.
Yes.
And also fills in with toxins, which means the body is susceptible to injuries. So over a long period of time, 9 out of 10 you will find with rugby players or soccer players that have ankle injuries. So if it's not the ankle, it's the knees or the calf muscles or hamstrings because there's a weakness. And the emotions, as I mentioned, connected to that is obviously the anger, the frustration, the bitterness, all those things.
Yeah.
You will often find when you're watching, international sports, the energy is so intense that there's so much anger there. Not just the players on the field, but also the supporters. Yep. While they've got a beer in the hand, shouting at whatever's happening, swearing.
Yep.
And yes, in a way, it's because for the most part, we haven't been taught as a society how to express frustration and anger in a healthy way. But that's most definitely not the way. And so it might sound like it's an attack, but it's not. It's just an awareness, a light of awareness that has to go on to say, right, if I am pushing my body, how am I nourishing my liver and my gallbladder? What am I actually putting in? And something beautiful that we can do as a practical thing is include more red vegetables like your beetroot. That's amazing for the liver. So maybe having a nice veggie juice, and I know it's not the thing that you want after a rugby or a soccer match or tennis or whatever, But if you can make yourself a nice juice and, or go to your nearest juicing shop
Yeah.
that has fresh juices, cold pressed juices, but something that it will actually put the minerals and the vitamins and things back, the folic acids, all of those things back into the body. And so that is the thing. So as I mentioned, it was this overwhelm of anger, muscles. Oh, the other thing that also happens is over time, the gallbladder meridian runs behind the eyes. So it comes from this space here behind the eyes. So again, someone who has had chronic issues with liver and gallbladder, eventually by a later stage in life, they might need glasses. And they think it's old age. Meanwhile, if you clean up the liver and the gallbladder, the eyes will be fine. They know how to reset themselves. And yes, of course, there are other medical issues that might occur or, things that will need medical attention. But if it is just from a space of chronic illness, it can be restored. Often things like cataracts or things growing over the eyes, same story. It's built up anger in the body that is now solidified into that meridian, and you start seeing spots in front of your eyes. Same with spots on our body. So pigmentation spots, that is built up anger in the body, blocked energy in the body. And yes, sun damage highlights it.
Yeah.
People often think, no, if you go in the sun, you get sunspots. No, if the liver is healthy, the body knows how to absorb the vitamins that the sun is giving us. It knows how to process it and send it into the body as food. But if not, if the body is in a state of acidity, it becomes stuck energy. The body doesn't know what to do with it. So it just highlights for you where those energies are. So people struggling with migraines or chronic temple headaches,
Yeah.
that's a sign that the liver and the gallbladder needs a detox. Yeah.
Yeah. Quite a mouthful.
Yes.
I'm learning quite a lot. I don't like beetroot, but I think from today onwards, I'll definitely start consuming it.
Yeah, look, I mean,
lot.
there's so many other things.
Yeah.
If you Google healthy foods for liver and gallbladder, I always say Google is your friend, or now ChatGPT.
Yeah.
But it's about wanting to learn more. How can I sustain this human body so that it can hold me for much longer? You don't want to be crippled by your old age.
100%, definitely.
So,
I know my wife actually loves beetroot, and sometimes I'd look at her and think to myself, why is she eating this? But clearly she knows more than I do, right?
Yeah, and there's many ways of preparing it. So,
Yeah.
just go and Google a recipe.
100%.
Yeah.
So I want us to talk about fire,
Yes.
right? We spoke about the large intestine early on. Now I want us to talk about the heart and the small intestine. What can you tell me when it comes to that element, the fire element? Yeah.
So the fire that we speak about is almost like this zest for life, or the joy that gets you out of bed every morning. And the first thing that you will notice is when you're speaking to someone and they have this constant feeling of overwhelm, there's a lack of joy. And you actually see it in the color of their complexion as well. It's almost like the body looks very pale.
Yeah.
And when we have enough fire or enough joy, it's almost like there's this light.
And sparkle.
This sparkle that radiates. And so when you look at yourself in the mirror in the mornings, do you see that spark? Do you see that fire? If the answer is no, then what are you doing that's making you feel like you are being a slave to your own life? And so the heart and the small intestine beautifully teaches us how to create experiences of joy for ourselves and for others. And the purpose of the small intestine is to absorb the nutrients of the food. So again, when the body is in a state of alkalinity, it's easy to absorb. When it's acidic, it can't absorb. So emotionally, where are you? Are you finding yourself in a lot of negative thoughts, which means the body will then be more acidic? Or are you predominantly joyful and positive and feel uplifted and blessed by life? And so if the answer is, I feel heavy, then we literally have to almost like take yourself into space of, if I was my 7-year-old self or my 10-year-old self, whatever, what would I do to bring back that spark of joy? And sometimes it literally is taking yourself for an ice cream. Of course, don't make it a daily thing, but it has to be something where you just step away from adulting for a moment and say, I need to connect to my inner joy. And so things that we look out for when we are blocked in that space is problems with our circulation. So the blood vessels, if people have problems with their arteries or whatever those kinds of problems are, like I said, pale in complexion, any tongue-related issues. So if people are constantly getting mouth ulcers or sores on their tongue, that's an indication there's a lack of joy in the body. Because the tongue obviously expresses how you feel. And if you're constantly speaking about toxic things, your mouth is going to be full of toxic ulcers, you know. It also comes back into your perspiration. So excessive perspiration is people are literally feeling like they are pushed to their limit all the time. When do I allow my heart and my small intestine just a moment to take in what life is giving me and to allow my body to catch up with the rest of life? And not push myself beyond that limit. Wrist disorders, hot and painful joints, any inflammation, and then, of course, heartburn and indigestion, which is then linked to the stomach as well. But again, the quickest remedy is laughter. So if it means go and watch a comedy show or a funny movie or a whatever, allowing yourself to just laugh for anything from half an hour to an hour plus.
Yeah.
That is the first way we activate that energy of joy again in the body. And then becoming your own best friend, you know, like I often take myself out on a play date where
very important.
I ask my inner child what she wants to do for the day. And sometimes it's literally having an ice cream or painting my nails or whatever it is. But for the men as well, you know, I think it's almost like this rewilding process that we are going back into is to find your inner warrior. If it means the thing that you want right now is to go and hike in the mountains or take your fast car for a spin or your motorbike, whatever it is, or
get on your bicycle.
Just do that one thing to bring back that spark of joy. And it gives us purpose. Because if we're constantly just working to earn a living, you know, it slowly but surely is your own emotional death. Yeah.
Wow, beautiful conversation. Beautiful conversation. I think what you just, after what you just said, I've been thinking about getting an instrument.
Yes.
Right. So I know how to play the keyboard, but I've been wanting to learn the guitar. And it's a conversation I've been having with myself. So I think after what you just said, I think I am going to buy that guitar. As we close, Cindy, I want us to talk about first steps, right? Obviously, for somebody watching this who's new to this, they're wondering, my goodness, where do I start? And that's my question to you as we close. What is the first step? What first step should somebody take?
Thank you. So first step for me would be to get into a rhythm where every morning as you wake up, first thing when you open your eyes, and every night, last thing just before you go to sleep, is to do a body scan. And I think we have spoken about it in one of our previous conversations, but a body scan is first of all becoming aware of your breath. So the inhale, exhale, and the pauses between the inhale and exhale, and then gently scanning with your energy from the top of the crown all the way down to the soles of the feet and feeling the body, feeling where the aches and pains are, the tension or the stiff muscles or whatever it is. And in that moment, just breathing into that space or that organ in the body to acknowledge that I feel you. I know that there's something that I'm busy processing. And even if you don't know what the emotion is that's stuck, by acknowledging it, we allow the body to share what needs to come through. So sometimes it will be if you do the scan just before sleep and you feel a little bit of an ache in your rib cage, maybe on the liver spot, and you just put your hand there and you breathe and you go, I acknowledge. The next morning, a memory will come through for you. And that's how the body responds. It's almost like a give and receive kind of experience. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is to be more conscious of what we put into this beautiful instrument. Can we be more focused on putting whole foods and healthy drinks into our body? And then the third thing would be movement. Movement is key. We have to move this energy. We have to, whatever we process in the day, whether it is stretching, whether it is soft exercise like a yoga or a Pilates or a Qigong, or actually going for a run or a swim or some weight training, whatever it is, keep moving because you allow the emotions to shift naturally. And then the last thing for me would be to use your voice to shift energy. So not everyone was blessed with a beautiful singing voice, but we have the ability to shift energy. So put on your favorite song and just sing along with it, and you will actually feel this stuck energy that you feel inside the body, or the feeling of being tired or overwhelmed or weighed down shift as you start to sing. So music instruments, using your voice as an instrument is perfect to shift that dense energy or blocked energy.
Interesting. Cindy, thank you. This was wonderful. I learned so much, and I'm going to reflect after this episode. So thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to our listeners for listening always.
I think we lost our camera. But thank you so much for watching. This was Learning How to Live. And today we looked at the body does not lie. Until next time, cheers.
Thank you.